Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's Ellechat on getting everything in order for tax time, getting your books ready. I'm really excited that you all are tuning in today, and I would love to know in the comments if this is your very first Ellechat. If it is, let me know in the comments. I'd love to see how many of you are tuning in for the first time. And if you are here for a second time or third time or fifth time, welcome back. So glad that you are tuning in again. I'm really excited about this week's topic. But before I dive in and invite Stephanie on, I want to make sure that you can see me and hear me okay. Awesome. Welcome, Molly. Glad that you're joining in for the first time. If you can let me know that you can see me and hear me in the comments, that would be awesome. Awesome. Welcome, Anna. Thank you, Marissa, for letting me know. And Nicole. Okay, awesome. So for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, it looks like you found the comment section, so that's great. There's one more thing I want to show you before I invite Stephanie on, and that is the questions and topics section. Hey, Kat, good to see you. Right below here, right below the window, that is. And that's where you can ask questions throughout the webinar. If you have a question right now, go ahead and ask them there. And at the end of the webinar, the last 15, 20 minutes, we'll ask Stephanie these questions and get her feedback on them. Another cool feature is that you can vote questions up. So if you really want to see a question answered, go ahead and vote it up and we'll answer them in order of the number of votes. Kind of cool feature. So I'm going to go ahead and invite Stephanie on. But before I do that, let me see. Ban invite. Sorry, guys. Crowdcast is being a little funny. Stephanie, I'm going to go find you and then invite you on. But in the meantime, thanks all for bearing with me. It is only giving me the option to ban Stephanie, and that would not be very good. Invite, ban, there it is. Okay. I'm going to invite her on. Stephanie is actually my bookkeeper for Ellen Company. I met her a few months ago at a workshop out in Denver, Colorado. Got to talking to her, and she was so helpful. I had tons of questions, as most business owners do, about taxes, and bookkeeping can be a super intimidating topic. And I asked Stephanie a bunch of questions, and she was so patient with me, explained things really simply. And after talking to Jake about hiring her, it was kind of a no-brainer to get her to help me with our taxes, because I'm sure most of you feel the same way. You start a business, you're so excited to focus on the creative side of your business, but then you have to deal with things you never really needed to deal with before. How do you handle taxes and bookkeeping for your business and not just your personal finances? Stephanie is so knowledgeable and so patient, and this whole month we've been talking about organization on the Ellen Company blog and in the Ellen Company newsletter, and I thought it might be super helpful to go ahead and start talking about taxes and bookkeeping and get everything off to the right start, get everything off on a good foot for the new year. So while Stephanie is joining in, she's accepted and it's connecting, so any minute now. But that's why I wanted to have her on today. And so I'm really excited to dive in. She has a lot of helpful wisdom to share with us. So if you have any questions at the outset, go ahead and ask them in the bottom section if there's any in particular. And while we're waiting, just take a couple minutes to look over them and vote any up that you currently want to see answered. Awesome. Sorry that it's taken a minute, guys. Sometimes it takes a little longer than others. Accepted. Let me try again, Stephanie. I'm going to remove you and then invite you again. We'll see how it goes. Maybe I'll have to reprompt. There she is. Yay. Awesome. Thank you. Sorry for the trouble at first, but glad you're here.
Okay. I can't really hear you, hardly. I don't know why. It's okay. We'll bear through it.
Okay. Can you hear me at all now? Should I speak a little louder?
Yeah, it's weird. It's only coming through like the screen and not any of my computer's like audio, but it's okay.
Okay. If at any point I can take you off and invite you back on, so just let me know.
Okay.
But so I told them a little bit about meeting you and why I invited you on today, but it's also really fun to hear how you got here with Steadfast Bookkeeping. So tell us a little bit about how you got here.
Yeah, so I started Steadfast back in 2011, and prior to that, I was working in the corporate world in a few different financial positions, and always loved accounting. Went to school for accounting and business, but was kind of just fed up with the corporate world, like a lot of people get, and decided that I was going to start my own business. So owning and running a business runs my family, so I kind of always knew that I would do it. So I started doing bookkeeping. I kind of told my husband that once I got my first client, I was going to quit my full-time job and start this business. And so that's what I did. Don't necessarily recommend you doing it that way, but it worked. And so it's been 5 years. I've loved every single minute of it. And so now I get to offer bookkeeping services to small businesses all around the US. So I love it.
Yeah, she's great at what she does. We've been going through my 2016 taxes, books, which are kind of a mess. And she's been so patient with me and so helpful. So I'm very grateful. But today we're talking about getting your books in order for tax time. And so right off the bat, I'm just going to dive into the content. What apps or tools do you recommend for keeping up with your books? What's your favorite?
Yeah, so talking specifically about your books and business finances, my number one recommendation is always going to be QuickBooks Online. So QuickBooks Online can help you track your income, your expenses, so including no matter how you're getting paid, whether you're invoicing through QuickBooks or using things like Square, or if you have an online shop, you can track all of that in QuickBooks. You can record your expenses and your cost of goods sold. So if you're looking for a software, if you maybe have been using a spreadsheet or just keeping piles of receipts and notes and things, I definitely recommend QuickBooks Online or similar software, because it's going to be a huge help and time saver just tracking those business, income and expenses. And then another great tool, talking about business finances, one thing that sometimes can be forgotten, or we don't think about it until the end of the year and then we don't know what to do about it, but it's mileage that we drive for our business. Whether we're going to meet clients or maybe we're just going to the store to pick up, some office supplies, those miles that we drive can be deducted. They're a valid business expense. So there is an app called Mile IQ, and that's another thing that I always recommend to use, because you can download it on your phone and it's always running in the background. So anytime that you're in your car, it's tracking the miles that you drive. And then you pull up the app and you kind of swipe one way for business and swipe the other way for personal. And then at the end of the month, it creates a report for you that shows all of the business miles that you've driven and what that amount, equates to. So each year in the US, the IRS sets a mileage rate. And so they say this is, how much, I think this year it's 54 cents that you can claim per mile. And so it takes your miles that you drove for business and puts the 54 cents in and tells you how much. And then you can my recommendation is to just reimburse yourself that amount each month that you've driven. But that's a great way to kind of keep track of the miles without having to figure out at the end of the year, where did I go and how many miles was it, and like pulling up Google Maps to figure out how many miles you drove and all of that. So
which is what I tend to do. That's really helpful. So Mile IQ, is that what it was?
Mile IQ, yeah.
That's awesome. And can you include in Mile IQ, like if you are driving to meet with a client, does that count? Does it have to? Okay, awesome.
Yep. So if you're driving to meet a client for a shoot or to meet them for coffee, to meet with them for the first time, to maybe, talk about, maybe they're just a potential client even, anything really that's related to business activities is a valid mileage deduction.
Awesome. That's really good to know. I will be downloading Mile IQ after we get off this Ellechat. There are a lot of other people will as well. That's awesome. So Mile IQ and QuickBooks.
Yeah.
I use QuickBooks and love it. Don't know exactly what I'm doing, have Stephanie's help with it, but I like that I can connect my accounts, I can invoice straight from QuickBooks and keep it all in a central location. So
Yeah. Yeah,
super.
exactly. I mean, you can pretty much do everything from QuickBooks. That's why it's always my number one recommendation. And then you don't need that many other tools. If you're using something like QuickBooks that has all the features that it has, where you can just sync, you know, all of the apps or whatever that you're using for your business, there's really not much else that you need to be able to actually track your finances.
Yeah, that's awesome. So is it too late in 2016 taxes to start using QuickBooks for last year, or what do you recommend doing on that front?
Yeah, it's not technically too late, but my recommendation would be to kind of think about how much time at this point would it take to go back and input all of 2016 transactions into QuickBooks. So it's, you know, it's great if you're thinking, okay, I really want to know my numbers for 2016. And so maybe I should just go back in QuickBooks, get it all in there, really see what it's like, and have, you know, these nice reports to use for my taxes. So that would be great. But like I said, my recommendation is think about how many transactions. So QuickBooks typically will only sync in 90 days of transactions. So a great feature about it is that it can connect with your bank, your credit cards, PayPal, Square, all of those things, and pull in transactions. So you're not just sitting there typing them in manually all the time, but it will usually only go 90 days back. So when you're needing 12 months, you know, you might just want to think about how many transactions did you have every month. If you only have 10 transactions a month, then I would say it probably is worth your time, because you're going to get some great reports out of it. You're going to have it in QuickBooks Online where it's always there for you and you're not having to go back and find a spreadsheet. But if you have a higher volume of transactions, I would maybe just recommend using a spreadsheet at this point, or whatever you've been using, if you've been using another software. So it's not too late. You can certainly go back and do it. It's just a matter of, you know, how much time is it going to take, and is it worth that time to have it all in there?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So if you have a ton of transactions, might not be the best idea to go and enter it all back into QuickBooks. But do you have a step-by-step process that you can share with us for getting your books ready? And can you walk us through it?
Yeah. So I actually have 7 steps that I'm going to share, but I know that might sound like a lot, and you're thinking 7 things, let me just get out of here, you know, this is going to bore me. But they're easy steps. They're easy things that you can do right now to kind of help get your books ready for tax time. You know, we're already in January. It's technically tax time. You can file your taxes, you know, anytime between now and April 15th. So we'll kind of just go through these 7 things. So the first thing is get organized. Okay, so organization is the key to good bookkeeping. So if you're organized, your whole bookkeeping system is going to be a lot easier. And so what I mean by that is, like for your receipts, let's say, make folders. So whether you want physical folders, you know, whether you like to have physical things in front of you and you want to take receipts that you've received at stores, or you want to print off receipts that you got, I would say make a folder for each month of the year. So you can do this going back for 2016 stuff. And then these things that I'm saying, you can also think for 2017. So you can think about, I need to do this for last year, but also I can put this in place for this year as well. So make folders for each month of the year, and then start taking your receipts and everything that you have, and think of a few main categories that you might have been spending in, like office supplies, advertising, meals, payment processing fees, you know, travel. Those are a few, like, you know, big categories that people usually have. And so separate your receipts and expenses and things like that by month, and then by the category. So then whether you're using like a physical folder, or if you're doing it in somewhere, if you want to use it like a cloud platform like Google Drive or Dropbox or something, that's great. Do the same thing as if you were making physical folders. Make a folder for every month of the year where you can drop those receipts in there. And then you can, if you're using like a Google Drive or Dropbox or something, you can rename those receipts. So if you snap a picture of it and you upload it, say it's Target, office supplies, and put the date. Then that way you have it in a monthly folder, but you also have it named and categorized out right there so you know what it was. And that really helps when you're going back to do your bookkeeping in QuickBooks or wherever you're doing it. If you need to go back and double check something, it just makes it so much easier, and it just, causes less stress when you're not having to like fumble through receipts and things. So organization is the huge first step. It's a great place to start.
Yeah. So here's a question too. When you have your account plugged into something like QuickBooks, is it still important to get receipts and file them away? Or what does that look like when you're when you have it already plugged into QuickBooks? Does that make sense? Do you still need to keep track of receipts?
Yeah. So even though your receipts are in QuickBooks, or even though you're entering those in, it's still a good idea to have them, because if IRS comes, which none of us ever want to think about, or we don't want it to happen to us, but we know it does happen, hopefully never to us, but they're going to want to see those physical receipts. So even though you can show them your bookkeeping, they're still going to want to see those physical receipts, but they will accept electronic copies. So really my recommendation is just go ahead and make them digital, whether you snap a picture and upload it or use a scanner, because, some of those receipts over time, they lose all of their ink and you can't even see what's on there. And then you have to find somewhere to store all of the receipts for each year. So really my recommendation is to make it digital and then just keep them in Google Drive or Dropbox or something like that.
Awesome. And that's helpful too, because I know I have a lot of digital receipts, like on Crowdcast will send me something, ConvertKit online. So that's good maybe I should just start saving the PDF of those, or take a screenshot and then drop
that's exactly what I do and what I recommend. Just take it from your email, save it as a PDF and just put it in that monthly folder that you have.
Awesome. This is good to know for us working together too, that I need to be doing this. So awesome. Glad that that's appropriate. So the first,
and that is super helpful. So if you are using a bookkeeper, then having all of that is super helpful. So, if you're using a bookkeeper, they're typically learning your spending habits. And so, if Lauren has a Crowdcast expense every month, I know what it's for. I know what she's using it for. I know how to categorize it. But if she goes to Target and buys something, well, I don't really know. It could be office supplies, it could have been a gift for a client. It could have been oops, forgot my personal card. And so that's where, if you're using a bookkeeper and you're keeping all of your receipts digital, you can, your bookkeeper can go in there and see, and then open that receipt and say, oh, okay, Target, she was buying paper, so it's office supplies. So it works both ways, whether you're doing it or whether you're having someone do it for you.
That's helpful to hear. And that also brings up another side question, which is, what does happen when you accidentally forget your personal card and you have your business card right there? Or I've had situations where I'm buying something on Amazon for a client and use my personal card instead. What do you do in that situation?
Yeah. So it happens, right? Whether we forgot our card or forgot to make the transfer to our personal bank account and we need to make a purchase, I wouldn't recommend doing it on an ongoing basis. I wouldn't recommend having a lot of transactions like that, but it's fine when it happens. You can use your business card or your business PayPal or whatever you need to use, and then just make sure that you're recording that as an owner's draw. So if using that example, if you go to Target and you're buying clothes or you're buying cleaning supplies for your house or something, and you have to use your business card, then just make sure that when that transaction comes through, that you are categorizing that as an owner's draw instead of a business expense.
Gotcha.
And then when it's the other way around, when you have to use your personal card for a business expense, then you basically want to input that in as an expense in QuickBooks and reimburse yourself. So if you had to, buy something for $100 on your personal card, then when you can, go ahead and transfer or write yourself a check, however you need to get that money to your personal account. And so you would put it in as, if it was office supplies, and you could just say reimbursing myself for, whatever date in the purchase. So you can definitely do it both ways. Just don't make it a habit would be my recommendation.
Yeah, that's so helpful to hear. So if you do it from your business account, make sure it's categorized as an owner draw. And if you do it from your personal account, reimburse yourself and then categorize it as an expense.
Right. Yep, exactly.
Good to hear.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first step was to get organized with folders and receipts and keeping track of those. What is number 2?
Yeah, so number 2 is to then go and record the expenses. So now that you have, you've pulled everything, you've got all of your receipts and everything organized, then go ahead and record. So for 2016, whether you're, going to go in and use QuickBooks, or if you're using another software or a spreadsheet, go ahead and list them out or categorize them as they are. So take those top categories or whatever it is that you're spending and list them all out. So if you don't think that you have all the receipts, which is likely because, we lose them or we didn't catch them all from our email or whatever, then you can go through your bank statements. I would take your bank statements and then go through and enter any that you might have, you might be missing the receipts, but you still want to get them in there. So go ahead and record all of your expenses. And then leading right into step number 3 is just record all of your income. So you've got all of your receipts organized and entered, and then you want to go and enter your income the same way. So for income, we don't typically have as much, like paper receipts or things to file, because we're probably either using, some type of online system to invoice, and so all of the invoices are saved in there. It's very unlikely that, people are still like printing and mailing invoices or anything like that. So with income, there's not as much paper things to be filed, but you still want to make sure that it's all recorded. So no matter how you, receive that payment, whether it was a check, PayPal, Square, Stripe, your online shop, whatever it was, make sure that you're taking all of the ways that you made money that year and that you're recording that income. Okay. And I would do the same thing, like choose main categories and, categorize them that way. So if you are, for instance, do design work and things, maybe you do web design, then maybe you just do graphic design, and then maybe you do branding. So, choose a few top categories and then put your income, divide it that way with the dates per month, same as you would your expenses.
Awesome. And how do you recommend writing them out in like a spreadsheet, like a Google sheet? How do you recommend listing them all out? How do you go about that? Yeah, so if you're looking to go back for 2016 and make sure that you have everything together and you're getting everything ready for taxes, I would say if you're not going back and using something like QuickBooks, then just put it into a spreadsheet. Okay. So what I would do is use your top categories. So put your categories there in your columns and then just start listing them out by date. And maybe even you can, export from, if you're using online merchants like Square or Stripe or something, you might be able to export and put those into a spreadsheet so you're not having to manually type all of those in. Right. Yeah, list them all out so that you can total it all up at the end. Awesome. Good to know. And when it comes to invoicing, I saw in the comments, Carrie asked, is there an online invoicing system that you recommend? So QuickBooks has one. Is that the easiest because it plugs right in, or what do you recommend? It depends on what type of invoicing you need to do. So QuickBooks has a great invoicing system. So if you're looking to literally just invoice your clients and you want a payment right back, great system to use, because you can go right into QuickBooks, create the invoice, email it, there's a link for them to pay on the invoice, and then the payment gets applied right back to QuickBooks and the money goes into your account. If you're needing to write up agreements, or if you're wanting to send a proposal to your clients first, you might want to use another system like 17 Hats or HoneyBook or something like that, just because QuickBooks doesn't really have the capability to send out proposals and then get them signed and then turn that into an invoice. So 17 Hats, HoneyBook, there's a lot out there that can sync with QuickBooks, which is great
because if you need to write up that proposal, and then once your client signs it and it, converts into an invoice, once it converts into an invoice, then it syncs with QuickBooks. So it saves you a step of then having to go in QuickBooks and create an invoice.
That's awesome.
So it just depends on what you need. But if you just need to, shoot off an invoice to your client, definitely QuickBooks Online is a great option.
Yeah, that's personally what I use. But HoneyBooks, from a client perspective, I really enjoy HoneyBook too, because it's so simple. Sign the agreement, can pay right there. It's good to go. So that's awesome to hear. So step number 2 is after you have organized everything, list it all out, both your expenses and your income. So step number 3, did I miss it? That was income.
That was income, yeah.
Income. Okay, so we're on step number 4.
Right.
Okay.
So step number 4, I would say file and pay your business taxes. So when I say business taxes, I mean basically your sales tax and your payroll taxes, if you have payroll taxes. So what we're preparing for is your personal income tax that you're going to file with the IRS. But throughout the year, there are business taxes that you should be paying, like sales tax or payroll tax. So throughout the year, you're really going to want to pay those. But if you haven't done it, then now would be a good time to do that. So go back and just see, did you collect sales tax on anything? Did you miss remitting it back to your state? And if so, go ahead and do that now. And then same with payroll taxes. So if you have employees on payroll that you're withholding taxes, that has to be remitted back to the IRS. So those should be paid throughout the year. If you haven't done that, then go ahead and do that, before you file your taxes, just to kind of get everything cleaned up and nice and ready before you actually submit your personal income taxes.
Awesome. That's really helpful to hear. So get the sales tax and payroll tax taken care of before you file your personal taxes.
Right. Yeah.
Awesome. So number 5, we're moving right along.
Yeah, so number 5 is reconcile your bank and credit card accounts. And so by reconcile, I just mean verify. That's really all reconciling means. So if you've heard that and you're like, I don't even know what that means, what are all these bookkeepers talking about reconcile? It's really just a process of verifying that everything that you have in QuickBooks or on your spreadsheet, everything that you're listing out as your income and your expenses is verified with your statements. So you want to, however you want to do it, if you want to go through and print out your statements with a highlighter and just highlight, every single one that you have, great. If you want to have it, split screen or 2 separate screens and just go through, but you really want to verify that what's on your bank statement, all of the transactions, and the beginning and ending balances match with what you have. So if you are using a software like QuickBooks, then there's a great tool within QuickBooks that lets you reconcile, and you can go through and click off. If you're using a spreadsheet and trying to kind of gather everything for 2016, maybe it's best to go ahead and print those statements, highlight as you go, and make sure everything's there, because you don't want to miss, you don't want to miss something. So it's really a matter of double checking is what it is.
Yeah, just making sure that everything lines up and all the numbers are correct and you're not missing, thousands of dollars worth of income or something along those lines.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. So number 6?
And then number 6 would be review and record all payments made to contractors. So you should have got the, recording those expenses, that if you used any subcontractors, you want to make sure that those payments that you paid them are recorded. So if, in case you didn't, catch them when you were recording your other expenses, go ahead and review and think about, if you're a photographer, did you hire someone to edit or someone for a second shooter? If you do graphic design, did you hire someone to help you out with a big project? Because in the US, by January 31st, we have to submit 1099s to any contractors that we paid $600 or more within the year, with an if. So the if is if you paid them by check or like a direct bank transfer or something like that. So just within the past few years, something that's kind of been helpful to business owners is that the IRS has said, okay, if you're using like PayPal or Stripe or you know, if I'm sending you an invoice from QuickBooks and you're inputting your debit card or a credit card to pay it, that business doesn't have to issue you the 1099. The merchant processor will actually issue you the 1099 as the person receiving payment. So as a business owner, you just need to go through and make sure, did I pay anybody $600 or more in that given year by check, cash, or direct bank transfer, where I'm the person, you know, liable to send them the 1099. And you have until January 31st to do that.
Awesome. Good to know. Just in time. You still have how many days? 13 days to get that done. So, and Brianna asked a question in the comments that I have been asked a lot recently, and that is, should clients be issuing designers 1099s or the other way around? So if you have a client who's paying you more than $600, do they need to issue you a 1099?
Yeah, technically they should, unless you are a corporation.
Okay.
So the thing is, you can ask for it. So if someone hires you to design their website, you know, and say you charge them $3,000, technically they should issue a 1099 for that $3,000. If, again, remember, if they paid you by cash, check, or direct bank transfer. But if you went into QuickBooks and sent them an invoice, and then they, like I said, they put in their credit or debit card, and Intuit is who processes QuickBooks payments. If they processed it and it was a Visa payment, then technically they wouldn't be responsible for sending you a 1099. Technically, you're supposed to receive that 1099 from either Intuit, or it might even come from like the Visa processor or something. So it just depends. So technically, yes, but then there's the ifs. It kind of depends on how they paid you.
Okay, good to know. Really helpful. I think we'll be getting more questions about that in the Q&A. So we'll hold off on that. But so that was number 6. Now what about number 7? What's the final step for getting your books ready?
So the last one is you kind of have all of that in, you reviewed everything, you verified everything. And so now if you're using a software like QuickBooks, review your profit and loss report. So your profit and loss report is going to list all of your income that you've input, and then it's going to subtract out the expenses, whether it's a cost of goods sold or just a general business expense. And that's going to give you your bottom line net income or loss. And so that's that number that you want to know at the end of the year, right? How much did I make, or how much did I not make? How much do I need to pay taxes on? You know, it's that bottom line number. So review that report. If you've gone through and you're putting all of this into a spreadsheet, you know, you can easily find a way to take all of your columns, add up all of your income that you put in, add up all of those expenses that you put in, subtract it out, subtract your expenses from your income, and get that bottom line number. And really review that and think about, okay, so this is, you know, this is what I made, or this is what I didn't profit this year. But it's kind of just a really good check at the end of the year to see truly how your business did.
Yeah, sometimes can be a little humbling, but really good to know. Yeah, that's awesome. So those are, thank you for walking us through those steps, because I think it put some people, that it gave me more peace of mind, at least. I hope for those tuning in as well. And just to show us what we need to be doing for this upcoming year. So what are some, with that being said, what are some really helpful habits that we can start implementing now to prepare for 2017? After we've gotten our books in order for 2016, what can we be doing now to make 2017, this time next year, a little bit easier?
Yeah. So yeah, get 2016, you know, behind you, go ahead, file your taxes. And for 2017, my first thing would be go ahead and choose a software to use. So you know, put the spreadsheet days behind you. That would be my recommendation, and move to something like QuickBooks Online. If for some reason, you know, you're just not wanting to use QuickBooks Online or whatever, find a tool that's similar, but choose a software now. And start entering your transactions, you know, as of January 1st, 2017, get everything, you know, in there and started. And then I would say, once you have your software chosen, take time and make bookkeeping a priority. So prioritize it. However you do your scheduling, if you're using a planner, if you're using blocks of time, take time every week and for bookkeeping. So prioritize it. And so if you're doing your bookkeeping on your own, that would look like going into QuickBooks, categorizing those transactions, maybe sending invoices, following up with clients that maybe owe you, take time. So maybe just start with an hour a week and say, this is my bookkeeping time. If someone's doing bookkeeping for you, then maybe that's the time that you can use to catch up on snapping pictures of receipts or going in and, saving those PDFs to the folders. But just, make it a priority and really make time for it, because it can easily get pushed to the bottom of your to-do list. Oh, I don't want to do this, or I don't have time for this. This task isn't making me any money. But prioritize it and make time for it. You're going to notice a huge difference, and hopefully think bookkeeping is not that bad, because it's not.
Right. Yeah. And if you think that it's a pain to do it every month, it's an even greater pain to skip months and then have to do months worth of bookkeeping all at once. So that's kind of my motivation to
get it done. Exactly. Yeah. If you're going to get off this call and go through and kind of do that catch up 2016, I definitely think that'll be your motivation to say, okay, I'm starting right now in January and I'm going to keep it up. And so that would be another tip, is after every month, reconcile your accounts, what I was just talking about a couple of minutes ago. Verify that everything is in and correct. So if you're using QuickBooks, you just go to reconcile, it pulls it up for you. You check off each line and you just make sure that it's all in there. Because if you have everything in there and it's recorded correctly, it's categorized correctly, you've reconciled it, then you can rest a lot easier knowing that month after month after month it's in there.
Right.
It's going to look a lot better at tax time, because you're not going to have to spend all this time going back and trying to remember what everything was for and just pulling everything together. It's already all in there for you.
That's awesome. Good to hear. And I missed something that I wanted to ask as well about 2016 taxes. A lot of us think we just need to get it in by April 15th. We procrastinate until the last minute, or I'm speaking from my own experience. But you can technically file now, can't you? When is the best time from your perspective to file your taxes, or is there a best time?
Yeah, so since I'm not a CPA and I don't obviously know everybody that's here listening, I don't know your personal financial situation, I can't say like when is the best time for you to file, but I can definitely say, based off of experience working with a lot of clients over the past years and my own personal experience, I think there are some benefits to filing early. So one is, if you think you're going to get a refund, I've noticed in the past when I've gotten a refund that the earlier I filed, the earlier I got that refund. So if I waited until April 15th, it seemed like forever. It seemed like weeks and weeks and weeks until I got my refund. But if I filed early on, January, February, it seemed like a couple weeks and it was in there. And I think it's just because the IRS gets, overwhelmed at April 15th with all of the, tax reports coming in. And so it obviously is going to take longer for them to process your return. So I think the earlier you file, the earlier you have the possibility of getting your refund, if you're getting one. And then another thing I've noticed with clients is, if you are looking to make a big purchase in 2017, like purchasing a home or something that requires a lot of financing, a lot of times they're going to ask for like 2 years of tax returns. So, as our businesses are growing, hopefully, each year maybe it looks like, we're making more and more income, our tax returns are showing more and more income. So a lot of times people want to use their most recent tax return as one of those past 2 years so that they can show that the more income. So if you file your taxes early and it gets, approved and processed by the IRS, and you're looking to make that big purchase early in the year, then you can use your tax return from 2016 to help with financing. And then one other thing that I would say is that if you think that you owe, so if you're like, yeah, well, this doesn't apply to me, like I'm not going to get a refund. If you think that you're going to owe, I still think it's good to file early, because then you can prepare. So if you go and file, or put it all together in the next couple of weeks, or have your CPA put it together, and you find out how much you owe, then you can look at, okay, well, how much time do I have between now and April 15th? And I would say if you need time to save up that money, then break it down. You know, if you have 10 weeks or however much time you have, say, okay, I owe this amount of money. I have this many weeks until it's due, so I need to save this amount per week. And I just think that's really helpful, because sometimes I think we think, oh, I'm just going to owe, so I'm just going to wait until April 15th so they don't get my money, you know, ahead of time.
Right.
Well, you can file today. You can file any day, and your payment isn't due until April 15th. So go ahead and file. It'll tell you how much you owe, and then you can wait until April 15th to, you know, actually submit the payment, and that gives you time to save up.
Right. That's awesome.
A cool little fact that people might not realize, that can be really helpful in filing early.
Yeah, it gives me, it makes me want to file. Or it seems like for all of those reasons that you named, better is, earlier is better.
Yeah, I would say avoid filing an extension at all costs if you can, because really you're required to make your payment on April 15th. If you owe taxes, it's due on April 15th, whether you're filing an extension or not. So even if you, if you're thinking there's no way I can make that payment by April 15th, really you're supposed to contact the IRS and try to go on a payment plan. So if you're asking for an extension and so you think, well, I have until September or October now to file this, you have that time to actually file your tax return, but the payment, you're supposed to make a good estimated payment at the time that you file the extension. And then they'll adjust it. So whether you owe a little bit more or whether, you didn't pay it, whatever. If you didn't pay enough, you owe a little more. If you paid too much, they'll refund it to you. But you're supposed to make a good estimated payment when you file for an extension. So I say just avoid it. Like, taxes, they're not fun for anybody. They're honestly not. It's something that we have to do. And I always just say, why take that into 3/4 into the year? Because by the time you file an extension, we're almost into another new year, and then you're still working on another year's taxes. So avoid that at all costs if you can.
Yeah. Use this January motivation that we all seem to have at the fresh start of the new year to just get it done. You won't have to think about it until this time next year. Put those good habits in place and just make it so much easier on yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
But it sounds like, if all of you are tuning in today to hear this, it sounds like you're already on the ball anyway and want to get it taken care of. So that's good.
Yeah.
Lastly, before we jump into questions, because I want to leave enough time to do that, when should you consider hiring a bookkeeper to manage your books for you and make tax prep a little bit easier?
Yeah, so I do truly believe that at some point in every business owner's, time as being business owner, that you should hire a bookkeeper. And, that might sound cliche or whatever coming from a bookkeeper, of course she's going to say that. But really, I just think it's like so many other things in our business that we're not really meant to do it all. And so instead of having like a time to say, if you've been in business this long, or if you've reached this amount of revenue or this many clients, this many projects, I don't really think there's a magic number there. So what I always say is, when it becomes overwhelming, when it becomes way too frustrating, when you realize that you're always putting it at the bottom of your to-do list, when you're sitting there with a headache, just not understanding it, not wanting to do it, I would say that's the time to really, stop and consider, is it time for me to go ahead and hire a bookkeeper because I don't have time for this, I don't enjoy it, I'm not confident in what I'm doing. That's when I would say, it's time. And then just imagine like how much more productive you could be with your sales or with creating new products or services or whatever you're doing if you had that few hours a month, that you weren't spending on bookkeeping.
Right.
If you don't enjoy doing it, it's truly is likely that it's always going to get pushed to the back, and it's just not good. It's good if you know your numbers throughout the year. So whether someone's doing that for you or whether you're doing it yourself, you definitely want to have that information at your fingertips throughout the year.
Right.
If you don't mind doing it and you kind of enjoy it, then I say great. In this season where you have time to do it and you don't mind doing it, then go ahead and keep doing it. But definitely once it gets to that point of overwhelm and frustration, really think about, hiring someone. And if you think that you can't afford it, I would say just check some people out. It might be a lot more affordable than you think, or there might be options where maybe you still have to do the bookkeeping, but like I know we have a service where we offer quarterly support. So where we're going in there and we're double checking. So maybe there's services like that you could look into that give you that peace of mind if you can't quite budget for, someone to just take it off your hands completely. Maybe you can have something where you have support and assistance that you can at least, rest a little easier knowing that it's all in there correctly.
Right. That's what I was going to say. Before we jumped on live for the Ellechat, I was talking to Stephanie and just saying to have her keep my books for this year, I have so much more peace of mind. It's so nice to know that I don't have to worry about doing something wrong and messing things up royally. So it's so nice to know that the peace of mind has been well worth it for me. And Stephanie also told me at the beginning when I was considering hiring her, start off with a small package and see if you need more help from there. You can always bump it up to another package. Or if you just don't want to deal with it at all, hand it all off. But I know that for me, I've realized the importance of delegating in the areas where I don't feel confident in. I could spend the time learning so much about it, or I could take on another client and make money and hand off these kinds of tasks. So if you can do it, make it a priority. My 2 cents on this. But yeah, so thank you, Stephanie. Are you ready to take some questions?
Yeah, let's go.
So Yari, good to see you in here. She asks, how often do you recommend connecting with your accountant or bookkeeper throughout the year to ensure that you're in good shape come tax time, particularly as someone who's self-employed?
Yeah, so it kind of depends. So whether you're talking about an accountant or a bookkeeper. So your accountant, which is typically going to be your CPA, the person who's handling your taxes, if they're just doing your tax returns every year, then I would say get with them towards the end of the year and just say, hey, just want to make sure that I'm still on your list for taxes. Let me know what your deadlines are so you have a good idea of when do they need everything, and then you can share that with your bookkeeper. If you're doing it yourself, when everything needs to be done. If they're doing like some tax, maybe they're doing tax planning for you, maybe you're putting money into retirement, maybe you're trying to figure out, maybe your income changes drastically throughout the middle of the year, and so they're trying to figure out what you should be paying in estimated taxes. Maybe you need to meet with them quarterly just to do a check-in. But for your accountant or your CPA, if they're just doing your taxes, definitely check in at the end of the year to start preparing for, your taxes that they'll start working on sometime in the beginning of the year. Your bookkeeper, you should be in pretty consistent contact with your bookkeeper. Maybe everything is going great and they know your business really well and transactions are going great. I would say you should at least hear from them once a month, if anything, to get a profit and loss and a balance sheet report, important reports that they're going to be giving you so you can really see your numbers. There should be communication, I would say, throughout each month. So I always say, I don't really believe in just once a year bookkeeping. So if you have a bookkeeper that's putting it all in at the end of the year, I would maybe ask them and see if you can start getting that done on an ongoing monthly basis, and where they're really going in there every week or two and updating transactions. You can see true, live, real-time numbers.
Right. Yeah, so helpful to hear. Awesome. Good question, Yari.
Yeah.
Erin asks, how do I know when it's time to start making quarterly tax payments? I haven't made enough to do so in the past, as my business is only a side project for me, but I anticipate making quite a bit more this year.
Okay, so, now's the time then. So I would say when you file your taxes for 2016, if you're using a CPA, let them know, hey, can you calculate my estimated tax payments for 2017? Typically, they're going to take that number, they're going to base it on your last year's income. But if you have an idea maybe of how much your income is going to increase, you can let them know. They can take that in and put all their, tax calculations that they have and figure out how much that you should be paying each quarter. If you're using an online software like, a TurboTax or something like that, you can usually even calculate estimated tax payments on there. So I'm not sure that you can adjust that to show if you're going to have an increase, but I think it will at least look at your last year's income and say, it'll ask you, do you want to create estimated tax payments for the next year? And you can say yes, and it will tell you how much you should be paying and on what date. So your estimated income taxes are due every quarter. And it's an estimate, so it is what it is, but usually a CPA can help you kind of get a number that's pretty close, so you're not too much over or too much under at the end of the year.
Right. That's what my CPA did. She actually gave me all of the forms that I needed to send on with a check to North Carolina and to the US. And it was so helpful, and I went ahead and put it in my planner and just marked off, okay, go ahead and do this because it's coming up, and filed it away. So super helpful. Another great questionnaire, and that's exciting that you anticipate making more and are going to start doing quarterly payments.
Congrats on that.
All right, so Teresa says, currently I'm using Wave for accounting purposes, but in the past have maintained an Excel spreadsheet. What tips and tools do you suggest for monitoring cash flow and making both business owner and accountant happy? Inexpensive options are much appreciated.
Okay, so talking about your business finances, I think that maybe kind of goes back to the beginning, like QuickBooks Online. I know I've talked a lot about it, but I think that's an awesome tool. It depends on which option you're using. I think the most expensive one right now is $40 a month. Maybe the lower one is $15 a month, but it has a lot less features, but it might work for you right now. There are some free tools out there, like Wave is free. It's just really a matter of, what you're looking for, how many features do you want? But Wave, QuickBooks Online are both, I think, Wave is free. I think QuickBooks is affordable. And that's definitely going to help you if you're keeping up with your transactions. If you're keeping up with your bookkeeping, you're really going to be able to see your cash flow because you're going to see real time, what's in my account, what's coming up that's due. Yeah, so hopefully that's helpful.
Good to hear. And Celeste, good to see you in here too. She left a comment on this question and said that Wave is a double entry accounting system that's free, syncs with bank accounts. The company might make a profit by taking a small portion out of any payment received through invoices paid via Wave. So that's good to know.
Yeah.
Helpful to look into both of them. All right. Katie, good to see you in here too. She says, every year it's a total pain to fill out and send all of the W-2s and 1099s and other forms to get ready for tax season with past clients or other creatives I've hired. Any tips on simplifying or streamlining that process throughout the year? What's absolutely necessary, and where is that line drawn in who needs one?
Okay, so we might have covered the 1099 thing a little bit, the $600 if you paid them $600. I think I saw some comments about that, and that would be for the entire year. So you would have to pay them $600 or more for the entire year to, issue them a 1099. And I think what will help throughout the year kind of simplifying that process is, again, just keeping track of it and keeping organized. So when you hire a new contractor, get a W-9 from them right then. So you have their name, their address, their social security or EIN number. That's everything that you need to issue an EIN or to issue a 1099, of course, after you have the amount after the end of the year. Put that into QuickBooks or wherever you're tracking your payments so that when it comes time to issue that 1099, you have everything there. I think she mentioned like W-2s for employees. If you're using a payroll software, a lot of those will have great options that are either included or maybe you can just pay a little bit more to have your W-2s processed by the payroll company. And I would recommend that because they handle everything for you. They process them, they submit them to the IRS, they submit them to the state if they need to, and they mail them to your employees. So I think that's a great option. Keeping track of everything throughout the year is going to make that whole process a lot more simple just because you're going to have everything together. So it's really just a matter of pulling reports that show what, W-2s or 1099s you need to submit instead of trying to, gather W-9s, you know, put in all of the payments and get the totals. If you've done all of that throughout the year, then it's a lot more simple come tax time.
Yeah, that's good to know. Thank you, Stephanie. And great question, Katie. Katie's actually an upcoming Ellechat guest 2 weeks from now.
Awesome.
So stay tuned for that one. We have time for a few more. Samantha says, I'm a new Etsy shop owner and don't currently have a separate business bank account for my finances. It's just a side business for now. Do I need to have a separate account? Is there a certain point of earnings that I should have a separate account?
Not necessarily a number of earnings. I would say now's the time. So anytime that you're taking a hobby or something and turning it into a business, even if you're just like, let me put these products out there that I'm making on Etsy and see if anything sells. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. If that's the stage where you're at, you know, go ahead right now and open up that business account. And the reason I say that is because it can just get really hard. So let's say your business takes off and it starts doing great. And now, you know, you're having multiple transactions come in every month, you know, you're selling on Etsy or wherever, then you're trying to figure that out with your personal account. And so you've got all of your personal expenses, maybe you're working another job and you've got that money coming in, and then it's, you know, it's really hard, especially if you're trying to use a software like QuickBooks, and if you sync that account, it's gonna pull in everything. And so then now all of a sudden you're seeing all of your personal and your business stuff in there when you really just want to see your business. So at the beginning of the year, I would say right now is a great time. Go ahead and, you know, open up a business bank account. There's a lot of like small local banks that have free or very affordable business bank accounts. And I'll note also, sometimes opening a business bank account sounds kind of scary. If you're a sole proprietor or a single member LLC, you can actually just still open a personal bank account and just let them know that you're using it for business. And if you have a DBA, you can give them that. If you have an EIN, you can give them that. But a lot of times you can still open it can be a personal bank account. It doesn't necessarily have to be labeled business banking account, but set it aside to use for your business. So then go ahead, you know, in Etsy and put that bank account, you know, sync that bank account with Etsy instead of your personal account, so you can start seeing everything flow into that account.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that about a personal account. That's super helpful to know.
Yeah.
Oh, question answered. My bank required an EIN in order to open a business account as they define business account. Okay, so this is good to know. That was all comments coming in on that question. Okay, Next question. Yari says, what is the best way to account for processing fees? Example, if I have a $1,000 invoice and get paid by PayPal, but there's a 3% fee from PayPal, so the actual amount deposited into the account is $970. I'm assuming you input $1,000 as income and $30 as an expense. Is that right?
Yep, that's exactly right. So a lot of times, again, if you're using a software, it's syncing it in. Yeah, you'll just see that deposit come in, $970, and you want to say, oh, this was for design income, and put it, you know, categorize it, I'm done. But really, you want to split it out, exactly like you said, because you want to, when you're looking at your reports, you want to see your true income that you brought in. You didn't sell $970, you sold $1,000 worth of something. So you want to see that $1,000 and then list out your, I usually call it like a payment processing fee or merchant processing fee, you know, minus $30 to total that $970. So yeah, you're exactly right.
Awesome. Good job, Yari. Good to know. All right, last question. Are you up for one more, Stephanie?
Yeah.
Okay. So Catherine says, tax burden can be shocking sometimes when that final bill comes around. Do you recommend quarterly payments? If so, how do you budget for those throughout the year with other business expenses?
Yeah, that's a great question. So yes, I absolutely recommend quarterly payments, just because you're right, that shock at the end of the year can be overwhelming. So if you're making quarterly payments, it's it's easier to handle. You know, you can kind of take it in small bites. So my recommendation, what most CPAs would say, if you don't have a CPA that can tell you exactly, you know, how much you should be setting aside, you should be probably doing 25 to 35% of your income. And when I say income, I'm talking about your income minus your expenses, that net income number, that profit that we were talking about. That's what you're going to owe taxes on. So, you can look at your reports maybe every month and see what does that bottom line number show when you look at your income minus your expenses, and set 25% aside, 25 to 35, depending on if you're in a state that has state income tax, which most states do. I'm in Florida, so I happen to be lucky enough to not have state income tax at all. Yeah, but most states do. So
Happy for you.
You're going to be on that higher end if you have a state income tax. And then a lot of my clients just say, it's just better if I just take an account and, set it aside for taxes. And so every time they make a sale, they'll just put 25%. So if they, make if they do $1,000, they'll take $250 and they'll put it in an account and just save it for taxes. So I definitely recommend making quarterly payments, but maybe start saving that money every month or every week, whatever you need to do, and then make that quarterly payment. It'll definitely be less overwhelming come tax time.
Yes. And I know my CPA even had the amount that was due. I guess she estimated it for the whole year and had the amount due and actually on the paperwork that I needed to send in. So I knew how much to budget for throughout the year come those quarterly payment.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it helps if you kind of know that number, or at least that percentage, 25 to 35%, then you can think, okay, so out of every sale I make, this is how much I need to really be thinking about is for taxes.
Yeah. Awesome. Good question, Catherine. Thank you, Stephanie, for answering those. Sorry that we didn't get to all of them today, but I would highly encourage you guys to follow along with Steadfast Bookkeeping. Super, super helpful information. Stephanie's blog is a great resource as well. And then down below this screen too, before we hop off, Stephanie, do you want to tell them about the Creative Finance Academy 4-day email challenge and what that's about?
Yeah, sure. So I teamed up with a CPA, Amy Northard, and then a financial numbers coach for creatives, Brittany. And so we put together this 4-day email challenge where it's kind of digging maybe a little deeper into the things that we talked about today. And then also getting tips, not just from me as a bookkeeper, but from a CPA, what she thinks you should be doing. She dives a little bit more into the whole 1099 thing, and then Brittany dives more into like budgeting and how you can prepare for that and cash flow. So we kind of put 3 of our financial nerd brains together. I will admit that I'm nerdy. It's okay. I like it. But yeah, we put our brains together and we were just like, let's take this whole realm of business finances that everyone has to deal with and kind of give some good tips. So that's what the 4-day challenge is about. So you'll get a guide where you can kind of look at what's coming and then a reminder in your email inbox every day. And it kind of helps too if you're looking at that list of 7 steps that I gave. This will kind of be a way to get it in your inbox to say, okay, this is what I'm doing today. Because I know sometimes those steps can be overwhelming to see them all at once. So it's kind of 4 days of really like simple but practical things that you can do to make a difference for your finances.
Awesome. And it's free. So go ahead and join that if you haven't already. Be sure that green button that's right below here. Yeah. Be sure to take a look at that. Stephanie, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing all of your wisdom. It was so, so helpful.
Thanks so much for having me. And everyone had great questions. I wish we could answer them all, but feel free to contact me. And super great questions. I hope that this information has been helpful and helps ease your financial stress a little bit.
Yes, super helpful. And I think especially for this time of year, so much peace of mind in knowing exactly what to do and how to prepare. So I really appreciate it. Thank you all for taking the time out of your work week to tune in today. These Elchats are happening every week this year. So next Thursday, write it down. I'm going to be sharing my exact process for streamlining a brand from start to finish. And I have a fun little surprise coming along with that as well for the month of February. Not going to give it away quite yet. So thank you all for tuning in. And I hope to see you in another Elchat soon. Bye, guys.
Bye.